What's up, guys? Welcome to another video. Today we're working on this sleeve that I've been working on. I want to show you guys what we have so far. So this sleeve, how many sessions would you say that we have on this already, brother? Like 6 or 7, right? 6 or 7 sessions. So this is where we're at so far, and we probably have another maybe 3 sessions left to get this done, totaling about 10 sessions. And you guys can see the level of work, the detail, and the saturation of the color. But again, I want to today narrate a little bit of my process as I'm working on this upper area right here, just so you guys get a better understanding of how you can go about doing these kind of fully rendered color pieces. And this part right here is in the middle of the construction right now. So it gives you some insight as to how I go about my process. And you will see here that I always go, I do all my details first, and I usually do them either with a liner or a round shader. I'll go in and I'll mark everything that I need, like the mouth, nose, the eyes, and then I start, shading it and kind of just mapping everything out just to make sure that I have committed my stencil to the arm. So by the time that I have something like this, it's pretty well established, and I can go back to it at a later time and just finish the rest of the general shading that's gonna make the tattoo look more finished and polished, like these parts that you guys are seeing here, okay? But this is how it starts. It always starts like this. And if I have to do something for later, I might mark it, as you guys see here, with the color, with the original color of whichever object it is that I'm tattooing. So for example, if the flower is blue, I'll mark it with a blue outline. If it's red, I'll mark it with a red outline, and so on and so on. So that pretty much just gives you an idea. Some areas right here I left blank, but this is something that is relatively easy in the design, and I think I'm just gonna freehand it, or I might use a Sharpie later in order to go into this section right here and just like finish out the details and get it all done. But for now, for today, we're working on these roses, on these flowers, sorry, right here. So as I work, I'm going to talk about what I'm doing, and hopefully this will help you guys in your own process, okay? So we're gonna go into this rose right now, and at this time I've already done a few of the darker sections. Remember, I always work from dark to light and from cool to warm, okay? So in this case, I'm gonna finish this rose. I mean, this one's blue. I'm gonna jump into this one soon, but I wanted to finish out like all the darker tones on this red rose right here. And as soon as I am done with that, I'm gonna jump right into this blue rose, this blue flower, and then I'll move forward and I'll finish the rest of the stuff. But always go from darker to lighter. Anyways, dark means shadows, and shadows build the structure of the design. So as long as you got the main shadows taken care of, you're gonna have the structure of the tattoo pretty much in place. So right now I'm gonna dip my black into a dark red that I mixed. I use dark red from Eternal, and I mix it with black, and that gives me like a darker version of my red. And I'm gonna go into this section right here, and I'm gonna add a little bit of shadow. And I'm using, I believe, a 5 Magnum, just because this is a small area and I want to make sure that I can fit my needle into the space, but I also want to shade smoothly. So these Magnums are small enough to get into small areas, but they're also Magnums, which means that you can shade pretty smoothly with them, okay? So doing a little bit of the shadow here. And you always want to brush out a little bit further than you want. That way you can mix the next color into it. So right now, I'm going to clean my needle, and I'm going to use a lighter red. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to use this darker red, and I'm going to do this little spot right here as well. just to get it out of the way. Because then I'm gonna come back in with a lighter red tone. All right. And just a quick little note that I want to share with you guys. Whenever your needle is starting to dry up a little bit, you will notice that, you know, it's just not painting as much because it's running out of ink. You can always, before you dip back into your color, you can dip into water, into your cleaning water, and that will basically like give you some more ink. Like it'll basically like stretch your ink out, and at the same time it's gonna clean your needle out for your next dip. So that's something that I constantly do to make sure that I'm using the most out of my inks. I'm gonna grab a darker red because I wanna mark right here. And I'm gonna feather that out like so. Now I clean. I use a lighter red. And if you just clean your needle once, it's gonna have a little bit of residue from the last color. So just keep in mind that whatever next color you dip into is gonna have some residue of the previous color, which you can utilize that to your advantage in order to blend colors the way that you want. You know what I mean? So you just got to be aware of it. So in case you don't want that residue ink, you have to clean your needle really well. But if you do want it there, it's there for you to use, and you can mix into the next colors. And I use that all the time, guys. All of the times. Like right now, I'm dipping into a much lighter red, but I know it's going to get darker because it has a residue from the previous color. So I'm doing that right now as we speak. Going into a darker red now to do this area. Right here. And then this color has a variation of reds. It's not just red, it has some shadows of orange into it as well. So I'm using right here in this little spot right there, I'm going to use a color, I believe it's like rust that I'm using. It's basically just like a shadow of an orange. It's gonna go here, and it's just gonna change the color palette a little bit there. It's almost like it's like a rose that has just varying colors. It goes from red to oranges to just lighter oranges and then white. So I'm using that right there. Going back to my darker red, and you do want to make some changes to your reference. Specifically, I do this. Some people tattoo exactly the way they see it on the reference, but for me, what happens is it's not the same thing to have a digital image that you're looking at on your computer than a tattoo. If you tattoo exactly the same way that you see on the digital images, you're gonna get a lot of the edges are gonna get lost, and your tattoo is gonna fade over time. So you have to take that into account when you do this. That way, you know, your tattoo just lasts longer and it looks stronger. For example, like right here, this shadow wasn't there. This shadow that I'm putting, but I'm putting it there just because I know it's going to read a lot better when it heals. Also, this shadow right here, it wasn't there, but I'm putting it almost like a little cast shadow from the petal that's folded over. I'm gonna put that there because I know that's gonna make for just a much stronger tattoo over time, and it's gonna read better. I don't want any kind of doubts on the readability. I want to make sure it reads as good as it can. Okay, and those are the kind of adjustments that are going to make your tattoos look different from everybody else, because these are choices that we make. Every tattoo artist makes different choices, right? So these are the choices that when you make these choices, you start, you know, your tattoos start looking like it has a certain style, right? Because it looks different from everybody else's, because you're making different choices. I didn't like that color there, so I'm adjusting it and I'm putting a little bit of a darker tone in there. And so far it's looking really good. Now I am going to switch over to a round shader, because I'm gonna get into some areas that are really tight, and a round shader is going to do the job beautifully for me. So at this point I'm gonna use a round shader, a 9 round shader. ¿Estás bien? ¿Estás bien, Ale?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we're gonna go into this section here. So I'm basically just doing at the bottoms of all the petals. So right here it's gonna have my shadow. I'm using a darker red. Again, I'm gonna make sure that I structure this really well. It's not as defined in the picture that I'm looking at, but I want to define it. I want to make sure that it's strong. It has a strong look. And again, round shaders, guys, super abrasive on the skin. You have to be extremely careful when you're using these needles, because they can and they will hurt the skin. So the way that I use them, I make sure that when I use my round shaders, the way that I use them is as if I was scratching the skin, okay? Just barely scratching the surface. That's all you really need to do with these needles, okay? Because they're super abrasive, because it's a bunch of needles that are very tightly together into a point. So, you know, if you dig into the skin with this, you're gonna create holes. And I did that many times in my career in order for me to get it right. So I can tell you, you wanna be as superficial as possible. That way you're not hurting the skin. Remember, the needles, and I'm gonna keep saying this, guys, these needles are metal, okay? The skin is flesh, it's water, okay? So you don't really have to dig a lot. You don't have to inject the skin. You don't have to do none of that. None of that. All you gotta do is just make sure that the pores are open, and the skin will do the rest of the job, which is to absorb the ink, okay? So that's all you need to worry about. So you can just very lightly go over the surface and just make sure you're marking everything you need to mark. So right now here, this is not quite black. This is a dark red. So it's like red mixed with black. Red is one of those colors that you can mix with black to create a shadow, no problem. There's some colors that if they're too light and you mix them with black, you're gonna get like a really dirty version of that color. And you know, this is something that you could use if you wanted to, but you know, I try to keep all my colors like super clean and saturated, so it's something that I try to avoid. But red, because in its purest form it's a mid-tone, it's okay. You just push it over a little bit with black and it looks fine. It looks like a brown, and it's not bad at all. So red is one of those colors that I don't like buying the darker version of it in a bottle. I just mix it myself. I think the darkest red that I have is it's a color that's called dark red by Eternal, but it's not really quite dark red. It's not dark. It's more like a dark. It's more like a mid-tone. It's a really strong red, and I love that red. Between that red and another Eternal color that's called light red, that makes about 90% of my red palette. I also use different reds for different instances. Some cooler reds that I use, and I can't remember the name of them now. But for the most part, when I'm using red, those are the reds that I'm using. Okay, so right here I'm brushing out a little bit further. my shadow right here, cleaning my needle, but not too much because I want it to mix with my next color. I'm dipping into dark red. Also, it's really important that you position your client right whenever you're working in a specific area, especially areas that are uncomfortable, like the shoulder, because you don't want to be reaching over your client for long periods of time, because it's just going to make your process a lot harder for you, and you don't want that, because if you're uncomfortable, you're not going to be able to concentrate. So always try to get yourself to be as comfortable as possible, while also keeping your client comfortable, okay? Alright, so I'm making a little bit of an adjustment here because I want to darken some areas here. So I went back to a darker tone, and the skin's already open, so I'm just barely touching it. Just barely touching the skin. Skin's already open, so it's like a sponge. Just barely graze it. Boom, 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 boom. That's it. I'm gonna go over that area again because I don't like it. It doesn't look as clean as I would want to, and I know I can go over it maybe one more time. I might lower my voltage a little bit. I'm gonna lower my voltage a few decimals. That looks good so far. Okay, now I'm ready to use a lighter version of this red. So I'm mixing light red with dark red to get like a medium red. Alright, so far so good. Clean this up. And also, guys, like whenever you lay a stencil, I remember this stencil is super complicated, and when I put it on, the stencil got a little bit warped, and there was some information on the stencil that was missing. So there are parts of this flower that don't look exactly the way that it looks on the image. But if you're observant enough, and once you get comfortable enough, you can basically make up some areas of the flower, and it's still gonna look good. It's gonna look just like a flower, okay? So keep that in mind. Maybe starting off, it's not a good idea to do that. You want to make sure that you're doing everything according to your stencil and you're just very prepared. But at this point in my career, I'm able to do these kind of things and have absolutely no problem with that. So I'm going to a mid-tone right now, a mid-red, mid-dark red. Okay, so now using this mid-red, I'm going to do this line right here, which is basically, it's demarking the underside of the upper side of the petal, the side that's folded over. I'm also going to mark right here this little corner because I want that to read well in the tattoo. And now the color transitions to a much brighter red, which I'm going to dip into right now. And I'm going to blend it into what's previously there, because that's how you're going to transition one color into the next. You want to do the color, and then you want to sort of feather it out, and then you want to come in with the new color. You want to go over that area, okay? And you guys see here that I'm marking all these edges. This is not on my reference, this that I'm doing right here. But I'm doing that because I know that's going to give me structure, and you guys will hear me say that all the time. Structure. That's something that I absolutely live by in my tattoos. something that I focus on a lot, because you want to make a tattoo. You want to make a tattoo that's going to stand the test of time. Okay? Alright, so I feel that I can darken this edge a little bit more. So I'm going to grab a dark red, and I'm just going to lightly go over this line to mark this border once again. And it's going to look like there's a cast shadow there. You guys will notice. You see that? How it darkened up? And now I feel that it reads much, much better. Right here on the bottom, I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, and I'm ready to move on. Alright, so now I'm coming back with red, with a black right here. In this spot, it's just an area that's it's like a hole into the flower right here. It's one of those petals that's like deep inside. So a little bit of black. And guys, wherever you see black in a tattoo, this is something that I want you guys to understand. And this is, once you understand this, this will make a lot of sense for you just with like just visual arts in general. Black in a tattoo means there's no light hitting the object, okay? So unless the object in itself is black, you might have some areas that are actually black. But when you have full black on a tattoo, in any area of the tattoo, except for like hair or something like that, that is called an occlusion, okay? And you can search that up. There's a lot of information on occlusion shadows. I might do some videos later about occlusion shadows. But what an occlusion is basically that area in an object that is so, this area is so tight and is so close together that there's absolutely no light entering this area, okay? And that usually happens when objects touch each other. That little gap, that little line where the object touches the next object, that's what an occlusion area is, okay? And that's always going to be black. That's why when you have like an illustration, when you're doing a drawing or something like that, generally what the black lines are marking in a drawing, it's the occlusion areas, or like a separation from one part of the object to the next part. But a lot of the times it's the occlusion, okay? So that which you see there, these areas, these are occlusions. That's where the shadow is just not, the light is not going in at all, okay? And knowing that is a big deal, because later on we'll talk a little bit more about light, and you guys will understand a lot more how light works. And that's a huge part of it, because objects, when objects are not, every object when it's not exposed to light, it's black, essentially. When things don't have light to it, it's black. So if you're putting a color into something, you're basically adding light to that something, to that object. So keep that in mind, that every time you're coloring something, you're essentially painting light. You're not painting shadows. Alright, so that looks good to me. I'm gonna move on. There's another spot here. If it doesn't have black, for example, this spot that I'm doing here, it doesn't have black. Why? Because it's in shadow, the light's not hitting it, but there is a little bit of light that is going through it. It could be that the light is kind of hitting directly, or it's usually some sort of ambient light that's hitting it. Or it could be a light that's like, you know, obviously the flowers, the petals are very see-through, they're translucent. So the light could be shining through the petals and it could be lighting this area, okay? I need to get a Bob Ross tattoo, bro. I just thought about that. I need a Bob Ross tattoo. That's my next tattoo. Okay, so now we're gonna do the same thing here in this other area. And this part, it's a little bit darker because obviously there's less light that's going into it. And I'm gonna start speaking to you guys in these terms so you start catching them. And then eventually I'm gonna make some classes so I can, truly break this down for you guys. There's a book that really changed my career when I read it because it helped me see the world through the lens of an artist. And that book is, I think it's called Light and Shadow, no, Light and Color for the Realistic Painter or something like that. It's a really good book. I have to double check the name of it, but I know it's Light and Color. I believe it's Light and Color for the Realistic Painter, and it basically just breaks down like all the science of light and how light affects color, and how you can use this understanding so you can basically paint your own stuff and light your own subjects without necessarily having a reference, because you understand it. Or when you're looking at something, you can understand what it is that you're looking at. So it's by I think James Gurney. He has another book that's called Dinotopia, and it's basically a collection of a bunch of images that are made up by him, and they're absolutely stunning and they look super realistic, guys. So he has a few other books that are really good. There's one that I have in my library that I have it pending to read it, and it talks about imaginative painting. It's really good too. James Gurney, Light and Color. Super important book for anybody who aspires to do color artwork. I would say it's the single book that kind of made me as a color artist. So with that book, you really don't need anything else. Okay, so I'm gonna finish the rest of these shadows, and I'll see you guys back in a minute, okay? So now I have most of the shadows in the flower mapped in, and what is left to do, I gotta put the light tones in, but I'm not gonna do that just now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put like a mid-tone, a mid-red in between all of the petals. Now, this is not something that you will see in my reference, but the reason why I want to do this is because it's just gonna solidify my tattoo, and it's gonna make it read better, okay? Because if I leave it just the way it is right now, and I just put a bunch of light tones in there, it's just gonna wash out over time. Actually, as soon as it heals, it'll start looking washed out. So, you know, it'll look really great for the picture, and that's something you'll see a lot online, where you'll see really cool tattoos. They're hyper realistic. They have no lines. They have no, you know, it almost looks like a digital picture, and those are great. They really do look good. But these tattoos, they just don't stand the test of time. So I prefer something that is not hyper realistic and is solid. And this is just my preference, you know, from my experience tattooing. Not that there's anything wrong with anything else, but in my experience, I prefer having something more solid that's gonna stand the test of time, because I hate touching up tattoos. And I don't know how long I'm gonna be around for my clients, so I wanna make sure that when it's there, when it's on them, it's good, it's ready to go, and they don't have to worry about it for the next 10-15 years. You know, there are some colors that are gonna fade over time, and that's to be expected. There are some colors that are going to fade over time, and that's to be expected. But you don't want your tattoo to fade right away after you're done with it. If that happens, then it's on you as a tattoo artist. So it's your responsibility to make sure that you're making a tattoo that's super solid. And that's gonna be a great business card for you guys, because you know, you have your client that's walking around, they have a really cool tattoo, it's solid as hell, and it's bold, and people are just gonna ask. People are gonna take notice, people are gonna ask. Like, I literally just got a follower today, and he DM'd me, and it was from another client of mine. You know, it was exactly what I'm talking to you guys about. He saw the tattoo stands out, and guess what? They want to follow me, they want to know who I am, they want to know what I do. So I'm finishing up this shadows right here, a few cast shadows that I wanna add into this flower. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to move on to the next flower, because, and I've mentioned this before in previous videos, that your darker, cooler colors are always going to stain your lighter colors, okay? And I'm gonna be working on a flower that's next to this one, and it is blue. So if I start putting a bunch of light tones here and whites and all that, they're gonna get stained, and then I'm not gonna have a good result at the end. So as soon as I'm done with all these like dark and mid tones, I'm going to move on to the next part of the flowers, or the next flower, sorry. Still making some adjustments here. You also have to take into account the skin tone of the client, and just the texture of his skin as well. Like, there are some clients that they have really light skin, and the skin is super smooth, and in these cases you don't have to be so keen on making sure that the tattoo is as bold. But my client's skin, his skin is really porous. He has a lot of hair. His skin is super porous, and what it does is it makes his tattoos, it's a little bit harder for his tattoos to look defined on his skin. So I have to make an extra effort to make sure that I define the tattoo with the decisions that I'm making, because if not, it'll just get lost in his skin. There are some clients that they're just super white and they're lucky, and you can basically do whatever you want on them. But you know, we live here in Miami. Most people in Miami are not that kind of skin tone, so I've had to adjust my tattooing to the skin types that we have here, that are generally they're lighter skins, but they're not super white. You know, there's not a lot of Caucasians here, so you have lighter skin Hispanics, but you know, their tattoos need a little bit more contrast to make sure that it stands the test of time. So you guys will see that I'm going over areas that I've already tattooed, but I'm going over it very, very lightly to make sure that I don't hurt the skin. So you see that right so far, that already looks like a flower. I left all my light tones and my whites, and I'm gonna move on to this flower right here, okay? And I'm going to keep going with my round shader, guys. It's a super versatile tool, and it helps me get into like little areas. And then later on I can come in with a Magnum if I need to, and then I can like clean up if I want to. Okay, and here I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna start with my darker blues where they're needed. Feathering out my color. Working on my blacks. There's a darker area here. So right now I'm basically working on the textures and the folds that I'm seeing in the picture. And obviously those folds, they have less light, so their colors are going to be a little bit on the darker side. It's usually, guys, it's usually the same process. Once you understand it and you can get your application down, then it's really just a matter of doing the tattoo. It's just a matter of sitting here, taking the time, and doing what you gotta do, okay? That's why the foundation, which is, to me, the foundation is the theoretical side, you know, where you're understanding lights and shadows and color and all that. That's why that stuff is so important, because once you understand, then it's just a matter of practice. And once you get your body and your mind to be able to acquire the skills through repetition, that's it, you got it. But if you don't have the theoretical part, you're screwed up. That's it. You're never gonna get it. It doesn't matter how good of a tattoo artist you are. It doesn't matter how well you move your hands, or you know, how good you think you are. You know, it's just, you're not gonna get it. You're not gonna be able to do this super well done realistic tattoos. You're not gonna be able to, because you need to understand lighting. Lighting is everything. And again, I'm not being super faithful to the image. I'm kind of just doing my thing. As long as it has a little bit of the pattern that it has on the image, I can move freely throughout it. You just got to make sure you leave the lights where they go. You put the darks where they go. You put the lights where they go. And you have an image. You don't have to make it exactly the same as you see in the picture. And when you do that, when you become a little bit more loose like that, you start having a little bit more fun, because you don't have the pressure of this has to be perfect, this has to be perfect. Especially on something like this. If you're doing a portrait, you better make sure you're making it look exactly as the picture. But if you're doing flowers, hairs, like just texture stuff, you can move a little bit more freely, as long as you're respecting the value system, okay? And what is the value system? How dark and how light a color is. Okay, so as long as you're respecting that, you're good, you're solid. And guys, if you find these videos useful, I would please ask you to subscribe to the channel, to like the videos. You can share them with your friends. If you have a friend that's learning to tattoo, this is gonna be super useful for them. Or even if you have a tattoo artist that you think, you know, they want to improve their skills or whatever, please share these videos. It would help me out a lot, and it's gonna help them out tremendously as well. I also will appreciate comments, because, you know, in the comments you can ask questions, and I will go through these comments and I'll make sure that I answer the comments by making videos regarding your questions. That way, you know, I'm making videos actually catering to the things that you actually need to learn about. So please don't be shy, write questions in the comments. You can also follow me on my IG, or the studio's IG. So the channel's IG is going to be Art City Tattoo, and mine personal is Chris Sage Tattoo. So if you want, you can DM me there. I don't have a problem answering DMs. So hit me up, ask me questions, and I'll do my best to help out, okay? Okay, so far I got my shadows, and I'm going to, actually I'm missing one right here. Missing this shadow. And after I'm done with this shadow, I'm going to move on to my midtones and my light tones. And I'm going to go ahead and just knock the light tones out on this flower, because like I said, it's blue, and I'm not worried about it being stained by the rest of the I'm not worried about this color being stained by anything else that I'm doing. So okay, so here I'm gonna make a little adjustment. I want this a little bit darker here, so I'm adding a little bit more black. Okay guys, so now I'm ready to start adding my midtones and my lighter tones. So I'm going into a mid light tone here, right here as well. Actually, there's a darker tone in here, and this is basically, when you do a dark tone, you're doing a shadow, so that this is gonna read like a crease in the flower. Okay, because if there's a dark tone, there's a shadow, that means it's folding away from the light, right? So if it's folding away from the light, that's what it looks like. Okay, and I'm going to do this little spot right here, which is, it's a spot from a different flower, and it's purple. So I'm just going to get this out of the way because it's dark as well. And it transitions into a lighter purple. I'm going to grab that color now. I got to clean my needle because it's mixing with the previous blues that I have in my needle. So now going to like a mid purple. I'm going to put that color in here. And again guys, like, none of this looks exactly the way it looks on my reference. I don't care. As long as it looks like a flower and it looks pretty and it looks good and it's solid, that's all I care about, okay? I'm not looking for perfection. I'm not looking to be a photocopier. I am looking for something that it's a good tattoo. Okay, you have to understand that you have to adapt your reference to the tattoo. Okay, now I have my lighter color in there, and because it's a lighter color, you're going to see a lot of the blood coming through, and the color is not going to look, it's not gonna look exactly the way it should, because obviously he's bleeding. So you're gonna have to wait till he stops bleeding, until you see that color. So don't make the mistake of continuing to color because you think it's not there. Give it some time, wait, and it will show through. Okay, so just be patient, trust yourself, you know, trust the fact that you did your job, you did what you were supposed to do, you applied the ink properly into the skin, and just kind of let it be. It'll show. Okay, and that will usually happen with lighter tones, guys. A lot of lighter tones, yellows, light greens, light blues, you're gonna get the same situation, but it's okay. As long as you're aware of it, it's not gonna affect you. Always make sure that you're transitioning your colors and creating gradients. You don't want to have too much of flat colors, especially when you're doing realistic stuff, because colors vary according to how far they are from the light, which means that one spot is always further away from the light than the next. So that means that your colors are always going to be shifting from darker to light. So like even in one area, like for example this area right here, it'll transition from a lighter tone to a much lighter tone. Like it's not going to be the same. You can keep it flat if you want, like you have that choice. Again, there's absolutely no rules as to how to do this, but it's something you may want to keep in mind. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to finish the end of this flower so you guys can see the result. So the rest of this I'm going to speed it up a little bit, and I'm just going to go into this and go with my mid-tones, I'll say mid-lights to lighter tones, okay? And I'm just going to finish out the rest of the flower, and I'll see you guys in a minute. Almost finished here with this flower. I'm coming in with some mid-tones here, and I made, like, again, I made some adjustments. It doesn't look exactly the way that you guys would see on the reference, but it looks close enough. Okay, so I'm finishing up this petal here with my lightest tone. And then I want to go through the rest of this petal with you guys so you guys see the process. And I've done, guys, just so you know, I've done all of this with a 9 round shader, okay? You can do it with a Magnum. There's nothing wrong with it. It's gonna give you a different effect. But for me, in my personal experience, like I get more saturation out of the round shader, and I can make more organic shapes because it's a pointed needle, so you can move it differently. The Magnum, it almost has like the shape of a spatula, right? So it's flat on the edges, and you cannot really move it around too much to achieve organic shapes. So that's why when it comes to doing textures and stuff like that, man, I love my round shaders. I truly do. I swear by these needles. If you're not using them, you're missing out. You do have to learn to use them properly though, because they will destroy the skin, and I will say that over and over again. But you're not gonna be able to use them if you don't start at some point. So start figuring it out. Again, use them as if you were just scratching the surface of the skin, very, very, very lightly, guys. I'm going to go in here with my lightest tone. And now that the skin has subdued a little bit and is not bleeding as much, I'm going to take the opportunity when I'm done with this petal, and I'm going to revise all my previous work, okay? Especially my lightest tones. I know my mid-tones are good, but the light tones, sometimes because you can't see it while it's bleeding, you may miss a spot or two. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to revise it. So you'll notice, you'll see little holes, and you can revise those. And I'm just doing back and forth motion, guys. No, make sure you're not doing circles. Circles will destroy the skin, okay? That's the old school way of doing it. Don't do that. Back and forth, back and forth. Very, very superficial. Okay, and now I'm actually gonna lower my voltage. I was at 7.5, I'm gonna lower it down to about 6. I'm going to clean the area, and then I'm going to take a look. Yep, and there's a couple spots here that need touching up. So I'm gonna go from top to bottom so I don't miss anything. Very lightly, guys, the skin's already open, okay? Very, very lightly. So I'm just grazing that skin, and I'm just saturating everything that's already there. That looks good to me. So now I'm gonna finish the middle, and we're gonna end this video with that, okay? So for my middle, the middle is gonna be yellow. I'm going to create a shadow to the yellow by using dark red and a dark orange mixed together. That's gonna give me a brown. And I have to be very careful because I should have done that before I did my blues, my light blues. But it's okay. When this happens, that's why it's really important to be strategic, and sometimes you'll forget. But when this happens, in order to avoid this, the rest of the tattoo being stained, what you're gonna do is you're gonna lather the skin with Vaseline, plenty of it, and it's going to protect the ink that's already there. So you do that, and then you work in the area that needs it. You can pat it so you don't spread the ink. Make sure you clean it well. And now it's time to put my yellows in. And I'm going to switch over to a smaller needle, a 5-round shader, just so I can get into all the little edges, okay? Into all the little corners. I mixed a mid-orange with yellow to get a mid-tone here. Again, you want to make sure that your colors are transitioning. So you don't want to have straight yellow because it's going to flatten out the image. You never want to do that. You want to make sure you're transitioning from, even in the same area, from a from a darker version to a lighter version. That's going to make it look more real, guys. Now yellow. Yellow's gonna have the same issue as my light blue. The blood is gonna surface, and I'm not gonna be able to see it too well, but that's okay because I know it's there. Okay, so far so good. We're gonna end the video here, guys. I hope this helps you out. I'm going to just continue working on the rest of the tattoo, but basically everything else, it kind of has the same concept. So I'm gonna leave it here for you guys. I hope this really helped out. Like, comment, subscribe, share this video, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one, okay?